What is up, y'all? It is your friend, your homie, Damien Howard here with another Village Talks segment. I have my friend, my new friend, Isaiah Marshall here in this space with us today, originally from Detroit, but now he is in the South, in the Tennessee area. And yeah, just really committed to an interesting nuance when it comes to mentorship. From his faith-based perspective, what he is all about, which is what I've actually done for the last 10 years, is say, how do we co-labor with some of the other adult figures that we know are doing the direct mentorship, or in this case, discipleship work with young people? How do we empower them? How do we equip and resource them so that we can then multiply our efforts by
Mm.
focusing on training up the trainer or training up the mentor? So, super excited, y'all, to just learn a little bit more of Isaiah and for there to be inspiration and education shared through the presentation of what he's going to share that's going to be impactful for all of us. So, with that, Isaiah, if you can jump in and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Good morning. I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm excited to share, excited for our discussion. So, as mentioned, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, former track and field athlete, um, born and raised in Detroit. Ended up going to Mississippi State University, where I was a student athlete. Ended up transferring to Tennessee State University, where I completed my degree and met my wife there. And so we had three beautiful kids. And I will say, I have spent my career serving young people. I was a former youth pastor for about 10 years. And then until I transitioned into this newer role that I'm in with as being the director of ministry development with Rooted Ministries, a ministry out of Birmingham, Alabama, where we equip and empower churches and parents to faithfully disciple students towards a lifelong faith in Jesus. And so in my role, I oversee our mentorship program. So as you mentioned, I co-labor with other mentors or more seasoned youth leaders and family ministry leaders, where we help equip, resource, and empower them to walk alongside of newer youth leaders and family ministry leaders. 12 months, 12, we created 12-month curriculum that they kind of walk through together so that they can go out into their ministry spaces and faithfully serve young people. And so I'm a product of mentorship and discipleship, and we get to come alongside of other ministry leaders and do the same. So
At the end, you said it's a 12-month process, correct?
correct.
Yeah, at the end of that 12 months, what are you all expecting as outcomes? Let's just say, for instance, and I have experience and background as a youth pastor myself, but had you come alongside me in 2010, 2011, and just said, "Hey, Damien, we got some stuff that we can give you that can support you." By that time next year, after having gone through you all's process, how am I then empowered? How am I better because I've gone through the rooted process?
So here's what I found in my own experience, because I didn't go through a program like this either, when I was a youth pastor. So I went to seminary. I got my a master's in divinity, and which was a great experience, learned a lot of great things. But what it didn't train me to do is walk alongside of young people. It did not train me well to practically lead effective ministries. And so the leadership portion of it, as well as the shepherding portion of it. And so what we do, we come alongside and we have this robust program where we kind of hit on these five pillars: gospel centrality, theological depth, relational discipleship, partnership with parents, and intergenerational integration. And we feel like when if we incorporate these five pillars into our ministry spaces and we practically show them how to do that, they will then effectively lead gospel centered youth ministries. And so what that means is, hey, How do I structure my ministry? How do I partner with parents? Well, what is my communication channels? How would I train up parents who are the primary discipleship makers of their young people? And so we give practical tools for those ministry leaders to come alongside of parents. What do I teach in my ministry? How do I discern what curriculum is good curriculum? And so these are things that we walk through. And so once a ministry leader walk the 12 months through our program, they will have what we call a game plan that they can then start incorporating into their ministry, and that's mission and vision. That's resources, mental health resources, also curriculum resource. So it's again, it's this robust plan that they have that they can then start to incorporate, and so they feel empowered. They build community with one another, where each one of them are serving in different spaces. So they learn from one another. They have that community they can draw from as well. And then as they walk alongside one on one with that mentor, who can kind of guide them as well. And so our hope is that once a ministry leader leave our program, they feel more encouraged and empowered to lead gospel centered youth ministries. And in order to lead that gospel centered youth ministries, we feel that those five pillars are essential.
I just read a book. Oh, no. No, I'm not gonna lie on this podcast. I didn't do that intentionally. I just ordered a book.
Okay.
And it's been kind of collecting a little dust over the past month. But the name of the book is God, Grades, and Graduation.
Hmm.
Whereas there is a movement, and I know Professor Irvin is a gentleman out of Harvard, and he's leading an initiative with folks like the author of this particular text and others that basically says when you have young people that are being discipled and introduced to tenets and principles of faith, that there's a correlation with these young people actually doing well holistically in other areas of life, like with their grades and with their graduation. This is an encouragement for me to crack this text open, because I should have, gotten into this before now. But I wonder what you could speak to from your experience. And I ask this question because in many instances, it's just like, yo, we're gonna do the academic work over here, we're gonna do the mental health or social emotional work over here, and then that faith piece is over there somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Separate and not integral. So I just wonder from your experiences having your MDiv as a youth pastor and now training up the trainers, namely training up the mentors and the disciplers, what type of correlations maybe have you seen or you think are bound to happen when young people are discipled by these youth leaders who are better positioned to do what you call gospel-centered discipleship work? Well, how does that then correlate? Yes, we know that these young people are going to have a firmer grasp of just their identity in Christ. But I wonder, do they just have a firmer grasp of their identity in general? Have you seen this translating to academic success? Have you seen this translating to maybe these young people not being as involved in community level violence? Just any thoughts on how discipleship correlates with holistic wellness?
Yeah, that's a excellent question. What research has shown over the years, which can be a bit of a discouragement to some, but I think it's an opportunity. But what research has shown is that 50 to up to 70% of young people who grow up in the church kind of leave the church after aging out of youth ministry. Which again, it could be a very discouraging statistic. But I think when we think about how that helps young people holistically, I think about the relational discipleship piece. So one of the things in my experience that young people want to know is Does this person really believe the stuff that they're teaching? So there's one thing to communicate orally, like we're teaching young people, like in my space where we're working through scripture, we're teaching these things, but it's another thing to actually see that faith lived out in our lives. And I think one is when we talk about discipleship, we are called to make disciples and we are called to be disciples. And so in that relational piece, we get an opportunity to invite young people into our lives to show the struggles, the challenges that we're navigating, how I love my wife, how I father my kids, the good, the bad, the ugly, the repentance, the grace that's extended, all these things kind of lived out. And in doing so, we're showing them how to be disciples so that they can go out and make disciples themselves. And I think what happens is that it gives them a different perspective of who they are as a part of God's diverse kingdom. So they have a mission to be a disciple, to follow in the ways of Jesus, but then they also have a mission to go out and make disciples. So oftentimes what happens is that not only in ministry spaces that we're showing them how to do that, we're showing them how to do that also outside of these ministry spaces. And so some most of our mentors are in full-time ministry, but we also find that some have been in full-time ministry, but maybe in different vocations, but they still are a resource. They still have valuable insight, valuable wisdom that they can draw from, not only from the ministry space, but also from the non-ministry spaces that they serve in. And so we walk alongside. And I think once young people get a bigger perspective of who they are in Christ and what their mission is in his kingdom, it overflows into every area of their lives. How they look at friendships, how they view school. Now, I will tell you in ministry as well, as we serve young people, there is this tension sometimes that ministry can be kind of set on a back burner because of these other pursuits. We got the educational pursuits and the college arms race that the young people are doing.
Oh, I
But
got I got another one for you, bro.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're an athlete, so you'll get this one. My daughter is playing volleyball, bro. I'm not even going to church for Easter Sunday because
Mm,
we're doing travel volleyball. We're gonna be at what's this play? I can't. Why am I drawing a blank right now? But some type of massive volleyball tournament with hundreds of
mm.
teams. And it's just
Wow.
crazy how even things like, travel volleyball and sports, to your point, is just like trumping like discipleship. It's
Yeah,
trumping, what's
yeah.
growing them in their faith.
Yeah, there was a one time where Sundays was kind of off limits. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have these sporting events on Sundays, but by and large now you see these things popping up, and young people are getting busier and busier. And I would say, especially as I walk alongside of other ministry leaders, youth leaders, is we can't control that one. Two, we should not make young people or parents feel ashamed and guilt that they're kind of walking through that. But we have an opportunity to meet them where they are. So if we can, I mean, I'm not saying miss a Sunday worship or different things like that, but there are opportunities where we can go to that sports,
Mm,
game or
yeah,
competition. And I also would say, how do we then help shape young people to be disciples where they are? And I
yeah,
think about I think about scripture where it says we are God's living letter, his living epistle,
yeah.
meant to be read by all. So we are an open book. And so how we navigate, how we handle things, how we play the sport that we are involved in and engaged in matters.
Hmm.
Because as scripture says, it said, let your light shine before others so that they can see his good work and give glory to him. So how are we being a light in the spaces that we find ourselves in the competition space, the
Yeah.
volleyball space, the track, the
Yeah.
basketball court, football field? How can we come alongside as youth leaders and show them what that looks like to be the light in those spaces?
You know,
And then
one
show
thing.
up to some of those.
Yeah, no, because the presence and everything that you're saying, what I keep hearing resonate and what you're articulating is like the value comes based on our willingness as leaders, mentor figures in the lives of young people to be present, to just show up,
Yeah.
even when it's uncomfortable, even when it doesn't fit our methodology of what showing up looks like. No,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be in our youth group on Tuesday evenings versus me having to go to your school or send a group. Like, yeah, like I think it's real dope what you're saying, right? Because like, what could it look like? Yeah, we supposed to be having youth group on Tuesdays, but
Yeah.
maybe next Tuesday we're gonna all go and support Gabrielle at her
Let's
school
go.
for the volleyball tournament, and we're
Yeah.
gonna break bread after. I think it's just kind of those nuanced ways of doing life and being present that just really kind of supports ministry efforts versus and impede ministry efforts.
Man, that yeah, and it goes a long way. It means a lot to those young people to see the youth leader outside of those walls coming into the space that they're in. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so it's like it's not waiting for them to come, but it's going to them. And I think that presence is important because when you think about it, the
Yeah.
old rabbinic tradition it was that it's like
Mm.
the rabbi would invite the potential disciplee into their lives.
Mm.
You know what I mean? They so that they can show them what it looks like to be a disciple, and then to go out and make disciples. And so I think that's important. We even outside of those walls of the church is that we are showing those we are discipling what it looks like to be a disciple. And that takes presence, that relational piece. We have to
Yeah.
have a relationship. You can't mentor or make a disciple apart from relationship. And so that relationship piece is important and being present is hugely important as well. So
You know, we're in a space that's called Village Talks with an emphasis on what does it look like to have a conversation here that is
mhm.
inspirational and educational for youth development workers in whatever space that they might be in. And I wonder, pulling from the language of this podcast, um, yeah, you talk a lot about youth workers, ministers being prepared and better able
Mhm.
to converse and partner with parents. And now that's when I start to see that village activated, that
Mhm.
it's not just about you, parent, feeling like you don't have other resources, but if nothing else, you have this person and typically young adult from a local church ministry that's wanting to do life with your child.
Yeah.
So I want you to kind of talk a little bit more about that because that's when I start to see synergies and partnerships. I'm seeing youth ministers being intentional with working with families. Yeah,
Mhm.
just anything more that you want to say around that type of synergy. And by the way, if there's other advice that y'all give youth workers, maybe there might be different college, like for instance, I know I don't know if it was like a structured thing where, there was a massive college exploration that a lot of young people in Chicago were invited to, but I know at least three of my friends who do mentorship work, and even one of them lead is a youth minister from a church, and all of
Absolutely.
them just recently this last week during Chicago spring break took their kids on a college trip. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
for me
awesome.
that's that village stuff activated as well. It's not just parent engagement, but it's also post-secondary exposure, you know what I mean? And us connecting with young people who used to be in the youth group that's over at Tennessee State right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they're
Yeah.
they're going to help us to explore this campus and give like a real raw experience for young people. So yeah, talk more about the village being activated. I know I emphasized the parent piece, but it might be other aspects that you want to call out.
Yeah. So the village is a concept that that resonates a lot with me because I'm a product of it. I grew up in a huge family. You know, my mom was the fourth youngest of 15 kids. And so when you think about aunties, uncles, grandma, I was a product of a village. And then I think about mentors in my life, specifically my high school coach, Robert Lynch, who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, who who said, "Hey, I want to invest in this young man. Not only like athletically, but I want how can I help him become an awesome father one day, an awesome husband one day." And so it was through my relationship with Coach Lynch that I knew I wanted to invest in young people. I wanted to do what he was doing in my life because it was so important. It was so vital for me during that time, especially as I was navigating certain challenges, different challenges in my life. But then when I get to college, at Mississippi State, I was introduced to a ministry called Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and that's where the Lord captured my heart. And I end up transferring from Mississippi State to Tennessee State. And it was soon after I transferred there that I was introduced by another great mentor of mine who is like a father to me, even to this day. His name is Lee Brown. And when I think about what faithful discipleship, faithful mentorship is, I think about him and how he would intentionally invest in my life. He would invite me to the things that he was doing in the schools as he was, talking and supporting coaches, as he was walking alongside of young people. And then eventually he started inviting me in to do the same thing. So first he would allow me to see it, and then he would invite me into the same thing. So one is giving me exposure to hey, um, what does it look like to invest in the lives of these coaches and adults who are investing in the lives of these young people and who also gives us access to those young people. And so I get to see him do it, and then he invite me into that space to do the same thing. And my coach, my high school coach, showed me what I wanted to do, which was invest in the lives of young people. And Mr. Brown showed me how I wanted to do it. I think the Lord used Mr. Brown to show me how I wanted to do it, and that was in the space of youth ministry. Now, in youth ministry, we have in Rooted, we have this concept called intergenerational integration. And so historically, youth ministry has been sort of siloed from big church. So you'll have big church worship, the preaching, but then you'll have youth ministry apart from it over here, where we have the Wednesday night group, youth groups, and we have the Sunday morning teachings and stuff like that. But what intergenerational integration says, which is also a village, when we think about the village thing, it says is that is not segregating or separating students from the church body, larger church body, because there's a danger in that. Because what happens is young people start to see church through the lens of their youth ministry experience, and so once they graduate out, they feel like they don't have a part in it. And so as a youth leader, we say, hey, how can we get young people invested and engaged in a life of big church? And then how can we get big church engaged in the lives of students? So the adult volunteers that we kind of pull on, intergenerational, maybe it's college student, maybe it's a empty nester. And but we invite those more seasoned saints in to walk alongside of young people. So typically you would think about like, hey, this ratio of like one adult to five children, but like in my space I'm thinking about, okay, how can I get five adults in the lives of this one child? So you getting the church involved in the lives of students, and you getting students involved in the life of church, so that they can find a sense of belonging, so that they can recognize that they are valued, that they have value, that they bring to the church, the larger church body, because they'll spend most of their lives as adults being a part of that church, and it's only a season of their life that they're spending in youth ministry. And I got to do things. One of my heart that was my heartbeat is how can I get multiple adults. It can be college student. It could be those who graduated from college who have small kids or those who have adult kids. How can I get these adults engaged in the life of these students so that they can draw from that well as for me personally? Because we can't do it all. We have to multiply ourselves and we co-labor with others to do
Mhm.
that. So that's where I think that intergenerational integration piece is like, and even outside of youth ministry, I think, even outside of ministry, the church, I think there's opportunities to do the same thing. How do we, like, if a young person has a passion for medicine, okay, what does that look like to get an adult who studied medicine or is a doctor or into the lives of that young people, yet that young person? And so thinking outside of the box where we don't just see ourselves as the primary like mentor walking alone, but we're multiplying ourselves, drawing from the well and experience of others to invest in those young people. So that's where I see a huge opportunity for that village piece because that's intergenerational integration, but that's also a village. I think you use those simultaneously, but that's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to draw from the village to help raise these young people in the faith.
Yeah, I love that example that you gave of, historically we talk about, one adult per five kids in certain spaces or based on certain approaches. But you're like, man, what does it look like that every kid can say, I have a village of five adults in my life that I know I can lean and depend on in any particular stage or state? Even
That's right.
you giving us your lived experience and journey, that there was an adult figure who came and supported you and led you to a particular point in life, and
Yeah,
somebody else took that mantle and
that's
continued
right.
to build upon that. So that was awesome to hear. We're at the particular point in our segment, Isaiah, where I am, in a kind of figurative sense, like giving you a magic wand. And I want you to take this wand and do with it as you please. That if there was one area of your work, society as a whole, even however you want to take this question, that you can wave that wand at and see a massive impact, what would that be?
Man, that's an excellent question. One of the things that I tried to do as I serve young people, not so much in this role because I'm not, it's a parachurch ministry, but in certain ways I am, and so I'm part of this our cross cultural emphasis, and so right now I'm looking at like how can I resource more urban Black churches who, in a lot of ways, for whatever reason, lack of resources or whatever the case is, don't often have a full-time youth pastor within their context. So how can we come alongside? So one of the things that I had a heart for doing is building relationships with other churches. And so here's what I would say is if I had a magic wand, I would make it to where churches are not so insular in that they only rock with those who are a part of their church or their denomination. And so that's one of the things that I tried to combat when I was a youth ministry leader is how can our space, which was a more diverse, primarily Black church space, build relationships with churches that don't look like ours, churches that do look like ours. How can we do things together? Because what happens is that oftentimes what I find in my experience is that especially just in this faith-based space is that young people only they see church through the lens of their local assembly, like the building they go to on Sundays. They see church through that lens, but there's a global church like the church down the street. That's supposed to be our brothers and sisters and our mothers and fathers and uncles and aunties.
Hmm.
And so this is where I think if I had a magic wand, I would say more churches would do things together.
Hmm.
They will build bridges and not walls. And recognizing that we are all a resource for these young people. because they're not just the adults or the hope for tomorrow, but
Mm,
they have value today,
mm,
and they bring something valuable to the church, to the kingdom, that we can learn from as adults. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of societal like issues and challenges is because that we don't have proximity to one another.
mm,
And I think as the church, as the body, we have an opportunity to come along. I remember one time when I was one of the most meaningful trips that we went on is we partnered with a church, a local church that was primarily, it's predominantly white church, and we
mm,
were a predominantly black church. And so we did what we called the bus ride to justice.
mm,
And so what we did is we kind of looked at, we said, hey, how can we look at the ugliness and the stains of history
mm,
through the lens of God's redemptive hands? How can we see God's redemptive hands throughout history? So we took this bus ride together. We went to, the 16th Avenue Baptist Church where the church bombing happened. And those young people got to come together alongside of us older folks. Well, we got to have some meaningful conversations about that. And then we went to, Selma, where we walked the bridge, kind of locking arms and singing these, our black spirituals and learning about that history. And hey, where do we see God at work in this? And then what is he calling us to do? And I think doing things like this, whether it's the college tours, whether it's the bus ride to justice, how can we invite young people to come together, be in proximity to one another, while facilitated by adults, especially, but doing things together. I think it helped build bridges, and it helped knock down those walls. As Paul says, that the Lord has given us the ministry of reconciliation. And how do we live that out? And that's been one of the passions of mine. One of the burdens of my heart is how can I be one who stewards well the ministry of reconciliation? And one of the things that I see most valuable is doing things with other churches. Yeah, so that's what we did. We went to the Tuskegee Airmen. We learned about that history. We went to Montgomery, to the Legacy Museum and the Lynching Memorial, and saw some very sombering things. But man, we also saw the hope. You know what I mean? We also saw how God is using people like us to redeem what's broken, to reconcile relationships that's fractured oftentimes in society because of all the race stuff that's going on. And so, man, I think we just have a great opportunity as we walk alongside of these young people to shepherd them and steward them well in that way. And I don't take that for granted. So,
yeah. No, this is awesome. This is awesome, Isaiah. As I shared a couple of times in this segment, the
Mhm.
intent is that anytime when like-minded folks, and you and I have like a double like-mindedness as far
Yep.
as like a passion for young people, but then a shared faith as well. When we come together, I am fully committed that there's going to be brilliance, even if it's just kind of one little small piece that was
Yeah.
shared. And I know for sure, as I was encouraged just listening to your answers, that your village and my village are going to be well served by taking this 30 or so minutes and just hearing the discourse that you and I just had. So, first and foremost, of course, all that being said, I just want to say thank you, bro, for how you showed up today and how you continue to
Appreciate you.
show up for the trainers and the disciplers of young people, mentor
Yeah,
figures in young people's lives. Again, that is where scale can happen, right?
for
It's,
sure.
yeah, I'm going to rock with one or two folks on a very intimate and personal level. But when you start building curriculum and processes, whereas you all can do this for hundreds of people, I think that that is something that sounds awesome. And it sounds like something that's very impactful. So
Yes.
super excited to learn of Rooted today. Super excited, Isaiah, as well, to meet you. Before we end this segment of Village Talks, again, super excited and thankful for our audience who stuck with us through the segment. Isaiah, I want to give you the final word. If there is maybe anything that Damien should have asked and I forgot to ask, if there is additional contact information like websites and things of that nature that you might want to point out for folks to be further directed to what Rooted is all about. Whatever comes to mind, bro. However you want to drop the mic, you have the floor.
Well, I know serving young people can be a challenge. It can be beautiful as well. It can be joyful, it can be sorrowful, it can be a challenge. But man, there's so much need in the lives of young people who are navigating even, you know, just they're navigating different things that even I had to navigate growing up. And what happens is, especially like within the church, youth pastors can often feel like, man, that their work is in vain and that they're sort of like the JV of ministry leaders, but we're not. And so if I can encourage any the leaders specifically like in those faith-based and even in non-faith-based is that to remember that your work is not in vain, that Jesus is still building his church, that the gospel is still changing lives, and his love never fails. And he has invited us into his harvest. My life verse is found in Luke. And it says, pray to the Lord of the harvest that he will send out laborers into his harvest. Go your way. I am sending you as lambs in the midst of wolves, that his harvest is plentiful. He is inviting us into his harvest to join him in the work that he is doing in the lives of young people. And we have to live lives that's worthy of that calling. And we have to co-labor together, which means build relationships with others who are doing the work that we are doing as well, so that we can steward that harvest well and that we can serve well. So be encouraged. We're not JV. We in the trenches with young people, helping them walk through challenges in their lives with grace. And so keep extending grace, keep showing up, keep being present.
Yeah, Isaiah, what a dope way to end the segment. Thank you again for that final bit of just affirmation. We're in a day and age, to your point in time, political pressures that make financing stuff hard,
Mhm.
all type of pressures, where it's just people sometimes just need to be affirmed that, yeah,
Mhm.
what it is that you're doing matters and it's important. And I'm absolutely sure that the people who've watched this feel that it in a palpable way resonating through the words that you share. So that's the end of this Village Talk segment. So grateful, Isaiah, for you joining, as well as all of our viewing guests who decided to join us here today and watch this segment. All right, peace out.